Imagine you're cruising down the highway, looking forward to a straight shot to your destination. Then, bam, you're suddenly forced off the interstate into a small town. It's got the usual suspects: gas stations, fast food places, motels. It feels almost like the GPS took a wrong turn, or the highway builders just forgot to finish the road. You're checking your phone just to make sure you didn't miss an exit somehow. But nope, this is actually the route. You have to snake your way through a jumble of neon signs and parking lots, past the McDonald's, Pizza Hut, motels, truck stops, and those giant gas station price boards, before you can hop back on the highway. It's weird. Honestly, it's borderline absurd. Why did they build it like this? Why would engineers leave this awkward break in what's supposed to be a seamless system? Thing is, it's not a mistake or some random town popping up for no reason. There's a hidden story, a legal loophole buried inside one of the biggest infrastructure laws in American history. That little detail turns out to have shaped millions of travelers' journeys, and most people don't even realize it. What if this town only exists because of that technicality in the law? So, welcome back to SmartScope. I'm Emma Chamberlain, and today we're getting into one of the most unusual quirks of the U.S. highway system, Breezewood, Pennsylvania. This isn't just a random blip on the map. It's there because of a peculiar loophole in federal highway law. Every year, millions of drivers are forced off the interstate and through a short stretch lined with gas stations and restaurants. Breezewood isn't here for geography or because business is booming. It exists at the weird intersection of law and engineering. It's basically a living monument to the strange consequences of government policy. Once you hear the story, you'll see the place completely differently. When you first roll through Breezewood, it just looks like every other roadside stop. You've got the chain restaurants, motels, gas stations, all jammed together along a strip of road, signs flashing and competing for your attention. Trucks rumble through truck stops, people dash in and out of convenience stores, families grab burgers at fast food joints. On the surface, it seems like a typical road trip pit stop, a spot to stretch your legs and grab coffee. But there's something unusual underneath. Most folks passing through Breezewood aren't actually planning to stop. They're sort of captive, forced to drive through by the way the highway system is designed. Not by choice, not for the town's charm or attractions, but because there's literally no alternative. It's like the road has a funnel, and everyone's stuck in it. Every year, around 5.5 million people are pushed off the highway to crawl through this tiny stretch. Not for snacks, not for sightseeing, just because the interstate says so. There's no way to stay on the highway. Everyone's got to exit, trudge through a quarter mile of businesses, then hop back on. This detour isn't a bug, it's a weird feature, baked in by the infrastructure itself. To really see why, you have to go way back, almost 100 years, to when crossing Pennsylvania was a genuine adventure, before fast travel, before interstates, when getting over those mountains was slow, tough, and exhausting. Before the interstate era, driving through the Appalachian Mountains was brutal. The roads were old, meant for horses, not modern cars. They were narrow, twisted up the hills, doubled back in tight curves, and ignored efficiency altogether. Back in the 1930s and early 40s, driving across Pennsylvania, say from Harrisburg to Pittsburgh, was a 9-hour ordeal. You'd wind up steep mountain roads, deal with sharp, nerve-wracking turns, slow down for every small town, and watch for kids and dogs darting into the street. It was exhausting. You needed patience and stamina just to get through. Those gorgeous mountains made Pennsylvania a wall between east and west. A beautiful view, but a brutal barrier for anyone trying to get somewhere. Engineers came up with the Pennsylvania Turnpike in the late 1930s, and honestly, it changed everything. The road sliced through the mountains with tunnels and bridges, giving people a smooth, fast way to travel across the state. It was the blueprint for what would become America's interstate system. When it opened in 1940, people could drive across Pennsylvania in almost half the time it used to take. The turnpike was a huge success. Everyone wanted to copy it. But it didn't come cheap. Tunnels, bridges, leveling ground, it all added up fast, and the state had to find a way to pay for it because no federal money was available. That's where the toll booths came in. Instead of using tax dollars, Pennsylvania decided to charge drivers directly. It wasn't exactly a private road, but it might have felt that way. If enough people kept driving on it, the tolls would cover maintenance and expansion, paying back the money borrowed to build it in the first place. Simple, practical, and it worked. But nobody really thought about how this choice would echo down the years. That toll-based setup would end up creating one of the weirdest quirks in America's road system. It would even give birth to a little town that, honestly, shouldn't have existed at all. Jump ahead to 1956, and everything changed. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act. This was the birth of the interstate highway system. Thousands of miles of high-speed, toll-free roads that would link cities from coast to coast. Eisenhower had seen the German autobahns during the war, and he got it. Moving people and military equipment fast could mean the difference between victory and defeat. He figured America needed its own network, not just for the economy, but for defense too. The new plan was huge. These highways would be paid for by gas taxes, not tolls, so drivers could roll freely from one end of the country to the other. No more paying by the mile, no stopping for toll collectors. All of a sudden, the map of the United States looked different. Cities grew, businesses moved, and people started living farther from where they worked. One of those new roads, Interstate 70, would reach from Maryland all the way out to Utah. It was supposed to connect the country, east coast to west, a straight shot across the map. But when planners got to Pennsylvania, they noticed something. The turnpike was already in place, perfectly set up to handle that stretch through the mountains. It was almost too good to be true. Why carve a new road when you could just use what was already there? It made sense. Save time, save money. No need to blast more tunnels or pour new concrete. But there was a catch. The entire idea behind the new interstate system was that anyone could use it for free. The roads were paid for up front with federal taxes. That was the deal. The Pennsylvania Turnpike, though, was still charging tolls, and Pennsylvania wasn't about to give up all that money. Those tolls kept the turnpike running and paid off the loans it took to build it. Now the federal government had a real headache. If Interstate 70 used the turnpike, drivers expecting a free ride would suddenly hit a toll booth. That went against the promise of toll-free interstates, and lawmakers and regular people wouldn't stand for it. This clash between old-school toll roads and new free highways created a mess nobody saw coming. Federal officials gave Pennsylvania two choices, and neither one was easy. The first option was pretty straightforward. Quit charging tolls on the turnpike so Interstate 70 would stay free. That would have folded the turnpike right into the interstate system and gotten rid of the whole mess, making the road free for everyone. But that fix meant Pennsylvania would lose out on all the toll money it depended on. The second option was trickier, more of a workaround with long-term fallout. Pennsylvania could keep those tolls, but only if they gave drivers a legit way to avoid paying. An alternate route where folks could exit Interstate 70 and skip the toll road altogether. The free route might be slow and inconvenient, but it had to be there, and drivers needed a real choice. Giving up the revenue wasn't something Pennsylvania wanted, so they went with option 2. It seemed fair enough, a way to keep the money rolling in and still follow the federal rules. That's how Breezewood came to life. To comply, planners stretched Interstate 70 out to a nearby road, U.S. Route 30. This road wasn't part of the interstate system. It was just a regular 4-lane highway running through a quiet patch of western Pennsylvania. Farms, fields, not much happening. Your classic country road. Interstate drivers had to exit, travel about a quarter-mile down Route 30, passing whatever businesses lined the street, and then get back on the interstate. Technically, this checked off the federal requirement. Anyone could avoid the toll road if they wanted, even if it meant sitting at stoplights and crawling through a little town. The law was obeyed, even if the spirit was definitely stretched. But what actually happened was pretty wild. Breezewood turned into the only place where two major interstates aren't connected by ramps or interchanges, but by a town street. That weird layout forces every driver moving between Interstate 70 and Interstate 76 to roll right down that small stretch of local road. There's no direct highway connection. Businesses caught on fast. Every year, millions of travelers were funneled down this tiny strip, a captive audience with nowhere else to go. Gas stations, restaurants, motels, everyone wanted in. If you needed fuel, food, a break, this was the spot. You couldn't miss it. Soon, the quarter mile was packed. First came gas stations, then fast food, then motels for tired drivers. After a while, Breezewood earned its reputation. People call it the most American roadside town out there. All kinds of chain stores and truck stops crowd together, their signs jostling for your attention in a mad jumble of capitalism. Commerce took over, all thanks to government policy creating an opening for business. Supply and demand meeting right in the middle of nowhere. Because of this quirky setup, Breezewood became one of the busiest roadside pit stops around, despite the fact that the town itself is tiny, tucked away in the Pennsylvania mountains, miles from any big city. Every year, millions swing by, simply because the highways force them through. Nobody sets out thinking, let's go to Breezewood. It's just a spot between places, a stop that exists thanks to a loophole, not a traveler's dream. Breezewood isn't a destination. It's a technicality, a town born out of the fine print, existing only because the law accidentally made it necessary. That's how a place that shouldn't really exist just does. But let's be real. This setup probably isn't here to stay. Nothing ever really is. Over the years, transportation folks have tossed around the idea of finally building a direct highway link between Interstate 70 and the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And these days, the rulebook for highway design leans heavily toward those seamless interchanges. No more shoving drivers off onto local roads. Honestly, this little hiccup in the interstate system is not just inefficient, it's odd. One break, and the whole smooth flow stutters. If engineers ever close that quarter-mile gap, Breezewood changes overnight. Drivers won't have to pull off the highway anymore. They'll just glide from one interstate to another. No stops, barely a glance at the town. And when that happens, all those millions of travelers who used to swarm through, fueling the gas stations, diners, and motels that line that busy stretch, gone. Just like that. Breezewood could empty out, turn into a ghost town. Just another quirky chapter in highway history. The thing that built it could wipe it out, leaving nothing but empty storefronts and fading neon. For decades, Breezewood isn't here by accident. It's here because of a weird little legal twist buried in a law from the 1950s. Some officials hashed out a quick compromise, probably never guessing this would grow into a full-blown town. They were patching up a short-term problem, not imagining the long game. But laws change, and so do transportation systems. Even the strangest towns can find themselves left behind. The loophole that made Breezewood what it is could close, and then it's sink or swim, adapt or fade out. It's just another reminder that nothing we build is really carved in stone. Still, Breezewood's story is kind of wild when you stop and think about it. Infrastructure isn't just concrete and paint. It shapes the whole world around us. Highways decide which towns come alive and which dry up. They spark economies, draw businesses, or sometimes kill them off. They're not just neutral lines on a map. Sometimes, one overlooked line in a new law quietly breeds a roadside empire no one ever expected. Breezewood only exists because someone decades ago wrote a rule with blinders on. It's a strange legacy, and proof that you can never predict how these decisions will echo into the future. That's what we dig into here on SmartScope, those hidden stories where engineering and law collide with real life in strange ways. Because when you start asking how these places came to be, you see the world in a more interesting light. Next time you roll through an odd little town on a road trip, take a second and wonder, what's its story? What twist in history or law shoved it into existence? There are endless quirky places out there just waiting to be noticed. If you got a kick out of this deep dive into Breezewood, stick around. Hit subscribe and join the SmartScope crew as we pull back the curtain on the wild side of infrastructure, history, and how people actually use all this stuff. We've still got plenty of stories to tell, from the secret world of subways to the hidden logic of your everyday gadgets, and even the origins of foods you love. Got a friend obsessed with road trips or weird roadside stops? Pass this video along. They'll never look at their next pit stop the same way. And yeah, don't forget to hit like. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time on SmartScope.